Alright, so once again, hello guys, and welcome back to our amazing course about the complete introduction to the deep web. So, in today's class, we are gonna talk about what is the deep web. So, we are gonna see what's the deep web, what's the difference between the deep web and the surface web. We are not gonna talk about the dark web in this course, but in the next class, we are gonna talk a bit more in depth about what's the dark web. So, let's start. Alright, so maybe you saw a picture of an iceberg on Google somewhere that says you have 4% of the web that is the surface web, and then you have the deep web that is like from 94 to 96% of all web. Well, this picture is a bit true. Why? Because technically, the deep web is just another part of the internet. It's like the hidden web, if we want to say it this way. Um, why is it this way? Well, it's very simple. The deep web includes all the pages that are not indexed by a search engine, for example, by Google. So, what does this make? Well, this includes pages, for example, YouTube, Facebook, any other website that is indexed by Google will be the surface web. So, as I said, all pages indexed are the surface web, and then you have all the pages that are not indexed. So, you have millions, billions, and billions and billions of pages. Um, and those pages are mostly, well, boring stuff. For example, it could be your bank account, it could be your email, it could be pages, well, basically all pages that are protected by a password. It could be, for example, a website that is under construction right now. So, for example, a website that is under construction will not be indexed by a search engine. And if it's not indexed by a search engine, well, this means that the website is not on the web yet. Well, he's maybe on the web, but he's not indexed. So it's part of the deep web. And as soon as it gets indexed, well, it's going to be part of the surface web. Um, so you have those pages at first. Then you can have web archives. Those pages are basically old pages of, let's say, current pages. We can say, well, for example, let's say you have Yahoo or Google. Well, they have old versions of them that exist, but they are just not indexed anymore. So those pages will be in the archives. You can access them by using some applications that exist to access older pages, but once again, they are just not indexed anymore. And you have unlinked content. So that's very simple. It's all the content on the web that has no backlinks. What's backlinks? So let's say, for example, websites such as, like, for example, Quora or YouTube. Those websites have a lot of content and they have a lot of backlinks. Basically, it helps them with SEO, but that's not the topic of our course. Backlinks give your website visibility. For example, you put a link on of your website, let's say on YouTube, and people will see this link. That's a backlink. So websites that have absolutely no backlinks and they just exist, they have maybe some content but they have no backlinks, they have nothing. Well, those websites are very likely not indexed by no search engines, and if they're not, well, they part of the deep web. And as I mentioned before, well, the majority of the internet is really on the deep web. So what type of content can be found on the deep web? So once again, we're not talking about the dark web. So the deep web, as I said, it could be any type of content possible and imaginable, and you don't need really, well, you will, for the dark web you will need the specific softwares and everything, but for the deep web, well, it really depends. Um, but as I mentioned before, the type of content that you can find on the deep web will be mostly boring stuff. For example, emails, archives, bank account statements, and those pages are usually protected by passwords and things that you can't really connect. So let's answer some questions about the deep web. So the first one is the deep web illegal? Um, well, not really. It's in itself, it's not illegal. If we talk about the dark web, well, deep web or dark web, both of them are not illegal in themselves because you can have a lot of very, very interesting information right there that you can't really find on the surface web. But once again, it depends what you want to do with it. Some activities right there can be considered as illegal, but once again, the the concept of deep or dark web are not illegal at all. What how dangerous? Well, how dangerous is the deep web? Once again, it's more boring than dangerous because it's just a huge amount of pages. So let's say, imagine, well, the normal web is the surface web is like, let's say, a small library, while the deep web, let's say, it's a huge, 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 huge library. So it's mostly, as I said, boring stuff. So it's not dangerous, but once again, it's like if you're visiting a website on the surface web that has, let's say, viruses or malwares. Well, you are as exposed as if you visit a website that has viruses or malwares on the deep web. But we are not gonna talk really in depth about all the dangers of the deep web, because yes, you have some dangers on the deep web that you're not necessarily have on the surface web, because well, the quality of pages and the content are different. Well, some you have some other type of content on the deep web sometimes, but once again, the most part of the deep web is like the surface web. It's really boring stuff. Um, is the deep web same as the dark web? Once again, no. It's both of them are different. We are not gonna talk about it in this class. Are gonna talk about it in our next class. And the last question that we are gonna talk is, can Google search deep web? Well, since it's not indexed on the deep web, since the pages that are on deep web are not indexed by Google, well, not really, because Google is not is not taking those pages in consideration, because the majority of them are well, private, or they they don't want Google to index them, and it's understandable. For example, an email service, well, they will not want Google to index, for example, pages that are supposed to be private. So those pages are private and only strictly reserved to the person that owns an email, for example. So once again, this is part of the deep web. Okay, one last question. What kind of stuff you can buy on the deep/dark web? Um, you can buy you can buy anything. That's the thing. It's like a huge market. Well, you have a lot of marketplaces. On the surface web, you have marketplaces such as Amazon or any different things. On the deep web, well, you have other marketplaces. You have normal marketplaces like Amazon, but you have other type of marketplaces. We are gonna talk about it in our next classes. But once again, all of this is really just for educational purpose, and just for you guys to know that this exists. So that's it for this course, guys, and see you all in our next class.